Back, everyone. Hi, folks. We're here at Einstein's Eyes again. We appreciate you being here with us. Today, we are joined by Dan Nelson and Palmer Wetzel, who previously were on the channel, as you might recall, discussing pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, and the legislative efforts here in Alaska, specifically House Bill 226 and Senate Bill 121, sponsored by Kathy Giesel. Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
Doing great.
Good.
Thanks for having us back.
Good,
Thank you very
good.
much.
And we got a lot of views on the PBM topic. We're gonna recap that, but we're also gonna dive into the counterfeit drug market, which affects HIV drugs, counterfeit drugs like Botox, Ozempic, and the impact of counterfeit drugs on public health, public policy in general. But first, I'd like to say hello to my partner and friend, John Ditkoff. John.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Ditkoff. I'm an ophthalmologist in northern New Jersey. I've been here for 30 years. After doing my training with Carl at Albert Einstein, Montefiore ophthalmology program, hence Einstein's Eyes. So it's nice. I look forward to seeing Carl every Sunday. And I'd like to meet some more people from Anchorage. I think I've met now. Well, I met you guys already, so it doesn't even count. But so I've met now probably half the people that live in the state, I guess, right?
Right.
And I will comment that I really appreciate you guys being on, because I learned a lot last time, and I've really been talking to a lot of people that have no idea about PBMs, which I didn't know anything about before that. And I will comment that for all you people out there watching our videos, our number one video right now, the most watched video, is herpes of the eye. And the second one, do you know what it is, Carl?
The crack cocaine.
Correct. So it just says something about our listeners out there. But
yeah, we appreciate them. So,
yeah, we appreciate
keep listening, guys.
Keep listening, even if it's about crack eye and herpes of the eye.
Right. So thanks, John. So as John said, I'm an ophthalmologist. I do oculoplastics and neuro-ophthalmology, primarily oculoplastics now at Ophthalmic Associates in Anchorage, Alaska. Been here for 3 decades now. And as I mentioned, we're going to recap the legislative efforts regarding PBMs here in Alaska. And I'm going to hand it over to Dan and Palmer. And maybe, Dan, you could kick it off and just give a little background, and then we'll dive into the topic.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having us back again. We're really excited to be here. And just maybe a quick update or recap on where we're at with, I think last time we talked, we were still hot and heavy in the legislative session. And just like a lot of things happen in Alaska with legislation, things got pushed to the last minute as far as legislation getting passed. But we were really happy that we did get the vehicle, they call it, was House Bill 226, which is kind of the sister bill to Senate Bill 121, but essentially the same thing there. But essentially, we did get that passed at the end of last legislative session. Where we're at with it right now is all bills have to either be signed by the governor, vetoed, or they can become law without the governor's signature. This one, we're all being told that it's going to be signed. It's not been signed yet, but we're in the next couple of weeks is what we're hoping. So that's been a little bit of a not necessarily stressful, but we want to get it across the finish line situation. So
congratulations. That's
excited.
Incredible. That's incredible.
I think when we last talked, we talked about, a lot of the details of the bill, and one of the unfortunate things, political realities and kind of the sausage making of legislative process is that the whole bill, the whole package, we felt like was really a Cadillac of a bill. It had all of the bells and whistles we wanted initially. To be quite frank, a lot of that stuff got kind of watered down and stripped out at the last 11th hour or so.
Right.
We're still at the situation where we're going back to the table again this year, and we've got some ideas and things we need to address. But it still was definitely a good framework and a good starting point. I'm not trying to put it down. We're super happy and very proud of the work that we got done. So yeah,
super important. Yeah, I mean, in Washington, in fact, I I think there was a bipartisan group of House lawmakers that introduced PBM reform, a PBM reform bill, really focusing on, drug pricing transparency, protecting independent pharmacies, I believe, and also lowering drug costs for consumers, and also just getting the drugs out there on the formularies. I mean, a lot of that is very mysterious, and even though we focused it in a more local, at a more local level within Alaska's legislative body, there is a ripple effect, as we've seen, and that's why it's so important. Your work is so.
One thing I would point out, I saw that it was watered, definitely watered down and definitely not the full punch that you guys really wanted. But I think just getting people to even know what a PBM is by having the bill out there, hopefully that'll make it easier to add the things you want in the future. Because I think a lot of people just aren't even aware of it, including a lot of elected officials.
Yeah, education was really important for us, and I totally agree with you, John.
Yeah, I think a lot more people are talking about it now. And I think one thing that was like super impactful was the education part with legislators, but employers. I think a lot are maybe tuning in now, and a lot's happened since we last met. And it's not just legislative efforts, but employers. It's really important that they're engaged in the benefits process. They're basically handing everything over to the PBMs, but they have a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility. And I don't think they were aware of that fully. That now we have Johnson and Johnson getting sued. We have lots of companies getting sued because the cost of drugs have been going up. And PBMs don't care if the cost goes up; they make more money that way.
Right. And just for our audience, the three largest pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, are CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and Optum RX, and they control about 80% of the US prescription market. And so lots of folks believe that they have monopolized the pharmaceutical marketplace and inflated prescription drug costs at the expense of patient care. So that, in a nutshell, is that what Dan and Palmer have tackled. And I'm inspired by them, and I salute them, because it's really an important issue for folks who are in healthcare, who take care of patients, and really for ourselves as well. Because look, as we age, we're going to be needing these medications as well, for blood pressure or diabetes or what have you, statins. So thanks for that recap. And let's dive into the counterfeit drug market. I'm going to post some articles on the website, on the YouTube channel rather, and I'd just like to get your thoughts on that, and hear what you, as folks within the pharmaceutical industry, are seeing and encountering.
Yeah. Do you want me to jump in, Palmer? Is that cool?
Yeah, yep, certainly.
Yeah, great. So the counterfeit drug market is prescription drug market is actually when you start delving into some of the stuff that's going on in that world is extremely scary. The way I kind of look at it right now is that anywhere where there's lots of money being transacted, that is an opportunity for unscrupulous people to come in and act. And I think that's what we're seeing in this situation, is that prescription drugs are the value and the cost of those are literally going through the roof. And so that is an opportunity for people to cut corners, to make more money, in not honest and trustworthy and good ways. And so that obviously has lots of concerns and ripple effects, and from people getting stuff that's potentially toxic or just not an active ingredient, and essentially getting a placebo. And then we're looking at like some really serious things, from hepatitis C treatment, HIV treatment, all sorts of different things, for diabetes. So these are serious deals when you're thinking you're getting a good, legitimate and valuable drug, and you're actually not. So very, very scary. Again, I don't mean to like perseverate on the pharmacy benefit manager issue, but I think that this is one of those things where there's lots of things in healthcare that are interconnected, and I think this is one of those scenarios where the role of the PBMs and how they've addressed the drug pricing and really affected some of this drug pricing is in a way. I don't see that they're the absolute like the only and the direct cause of it, but they absolutely play a role in kind of encouraging this environment where people would go do this sort of thing. So again, it's a complicated issue, but it's very, very scary. And one of the things that we've looked at that's really kind of coming in that's really pertinent to this is to this conversation is the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, or like the lingo in the pharmacy world is DSCSA or DSCSA Act. So Drug Supply Chain Security Act. So this is an act that's passed Congress in 2013, and it's been on a 10-year implementation timeline. And they've kind of kicked the can down the road on the implementation on that several different times. And so we're now looking at a final implementation of this November of 2024, kind of the final stage of that implementation. But that was a issue act that I don't know if you guys recall the fiasco back in 2012 with the New England Compounding Center. That was where they were making those IV and actually intrathecal steroids that ended up being contaminated with fungal. Big, very terrible situation. Over 60 people died. 750 people were injured, tragically injured by this, real not predatory pharmacy that was not acting in good faith and all sorts of stuff. In fact, the owners have been sentenced for various different crimes, including manslaughter just recently. So this is a terrible situation, but that really prompted a lot of this. So there's part with the quality and the compounding and how those regulations changed, but also was the supply chain. And so that's the part that's really affecting folks like Palmer and I a little bit more, and kind of how the drug goes from a raw ingredient to the manufacturer, to the wholesaler, to the pharmacy, to the patient, and kind of tracking that more longitudinally. And so Palmer and I have quite a bit to say. I'm sure Palmer will say more about the Drug Supply Chain Security Act and its role in this whole counterfeit issue, counterfeit prescription issue. But I think it's an important issue, and I just think that I think that the time will tell if it's the answer. I don't think it's definitely not the whole answer, and it definitely has its shortcomings and problems, but
Yeah.
there are some positives out of it. Absolutely.
Unless you guys had something you wanted to say there, I could continue on that subject a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
Um,
Paul. Yeah.
so the one thing that Dan mentioned, like the supply chain, so it's very good, like DSCSA, what they can accomplish, the integrity of the supply chain, the pedigree of it, knowing where everything comes from. But the one thing that kind of runs parallel with this that Dan and I have been looking at, and doesn't seem like too many people haven't commented on it, is the FDA recently, last October, was pushing for remote monitoring of sites, manufacturing facilities. That to us, we saw that white paper come out, and we're a little concerned because that right there is the source, the beginning of the supply chain. And if you start there and you're going to be remote monitoring of, over in China or in India, these sites, and you're no longer even physically going there, or that's the potential of it. It's almost like rubber stamping what they're incapable of doing now, and has been shown they haven't been able to get over there and monitor these sites physically. And we've had a lot of issues and recalls. It disrupts our supply chain. So probably our biggest concern, Dan and I've talked about this a lot, is you go ahead and implement the DSCSA, but let's make sure that before it even gets into the supply chain, that you've properly vetted that manufacturing facility in the first place. That's a huge concern. We need to have more domestic manufacturing of our medications. Someplace you can physically go, not to some adversarial country currently. In China, like the Germans are very concerned. They aren't even sending their inspectors over there because right now they have this new law passed that they can keep the inspectors from other countries held in that country, China, if they consider espionage. which is affecting their ability to sell whatever, to the drug supply chain. So there's lots of concerns with that. I don't know that remote monitoring of these facilities is really going to help if we have DSCSA in place, and here we, have an adversarial country just putting whatever they want into that supply chain. So then I could speak to this, like with Bottle of Lies is a great book, and he read and he found a lot of good information in there. FDA inspectors going to India, and if they weren't physically there, they never would have been able to find the shredded material in bags in a separate facility that showed that things weren't up to quality or up to snuff. They weren't manufacturing things appropriately. When you don't have the potency, and this is very key, the potency is not correct with the drug, or you have maybe excipients that are potentially contaminated, that's counterfeit too. That's adulterated. Adulterated can be counterfeit. So when you have people taking blood pressure medication, they think it's going to keep their blood pressure, corrected. Well, 1 month it might, the next month it might not, because we aren't accurately monitoring the manufacturing. It's overseas somewhere, and by the time you get there, they've already cleaned the place up and they provide what they want you to see.
I'd like to ask you guys about the weight loss drugs, which just to my mind would be perfect counterfeit drugs, because so many people want to get their hands on it, and there's a shortage, or there's a supply shortage. The demand is high, the supply is low, and that creates a perfect storm for folks to manufacture these, in whatever capacity they can, because there's a big profit margin that can be had. Do you have any examples of problems with Ozempic?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head, Carl. That's exactly what's going on right now. So, semaglutide is the active ingredient in Ozempic and Wegovy, Wegovy is the weight loss formulation of the brand name made by Novo Nordisk. There's no generic of semaglutide that's FDA approved. So what we've got going on right now, exactly what you said, there's a high demand for those drugs. They're extremely expensive. Again, there's another ingredient that leads to this whole, counterfeiting and less than high quality situation. So what we've got now are these compounding pharmacies, and the way that they're able to get around the fact that, there's no generic approved is that these drugs are on the FDA's short supply list, so that they will allow the compounding of these medications. But the problem is the only company that makes pharmaceutical grade semaglutide is Novo Nordisk, and they're obviously not going to sell that to these compounding pharmacies that are going to undercut them and make this, this other formulation. I've seen some crazy stuff. We just got actually advertisements from one pharmacy that had recommendations for I think it was, Palmer, it was like an oral drop of semaglutide, which semaglutide's a protein, so that's typically an injection, and to go through the detailed studies and everything to get protein into your body from an oral route, that's extremely complicated, and that's why it's been very difficult to get insulin as like a pill. So anyways, we got an advertisement to get semaglutide as these mini drops, and I mean there's all sorts of crazy stuff, and really the wild west of that's going on right now, and there's all sorts of reports all over the nation. FDA has all sorts of warnings about people being hospitalized because they're getting too much, too little, their blood sugars are going too high, too low. Who knows what the purity of this stuff, so this semaglutide that's coming into the United States, that's coming out of these compounded pharmacies, is of unknown origin. It's coming out of China, so who knows what quality and what other sort of things might be in it. So it's a dangerous game, and I know a lot of people are doing this to save money, because these drugs are frankly phenomenally expensive, and who has $1,600 a month to buy Wegovy when you can get compounded for $200 to $300 a month,
Right. And that's a perfect incentive,
Yep.
Yeah, that's a scary market out there, and it really emphasizes the need for tighter controls and transparency in our drug supply chain. John, did you have any thoughts?
I'm just curious, because I would not know the answer to this at all, but so the average consumer, let's say in Alaska or New Jersey, and they want to buy Ozempic and they get a prescription from their doctor, are you saying that the people are going on the internet and kind of finding off-label, like an advertisement for Ozempic, or are they actually going to pharmacies and the pharmacies are buying it counterfeit medication? Is it the consumer or the pharmacy?
I think what most people are doing are going to these online sites that they
Okay.
can get a physician, an online physician to prescribe for them and
Got it.
send to that pharmacy that they're affiliated with. And then that pharmacy would ship it to them is the general process that's happening for this compounded stuff. They're not, if you wanted to get brand name Ozempic, you're going to go to a legitimate pharmacy that's one thing that the supply chain, and we've been affected by that. We've ran out of Ozempic at our pharmacy, but that actually is right as we stand right now in the last 6 months that supply has improved quite a bit. So, but I think it's the compounded stuff they're going to online, quote unquote online physicians.
Well, I've always seen the ads for they don't call it generic Viagra. They call it the non. Is that the same thing? It's like the Viagra. I see ads all the time on the internet, on Facebook, everywhere else, that you can buy Viagra for as little as, whatever. That's probably not, it's probably that exactly. Like it's probably some website in the middle of nowhere.
You do want to be careful for sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yep.
fortunately for me, I'm not, but I'm just curious. Like we also had we did one of our videos was about Viagra. And I mean, we did talk briefly about counterfeit Viagra, that the dosing could be very different than the regular dose, and that really can make a big difference to people. They were saying in the studies that if you take the right dose, it's actually much safer for your eyes. But if you take a much higher dose, it's much more dangerous. So I guess that's just an example of it, right? I mean, people are buying it online.
Yeah, online, to the viewers, be very careful. Yeah, that's an easy way to fit some counterfeits, and send them in the mail to somebody. That's a known issue.
And then many of my patients that have relatives they're from India. For years, I've had patients that go to India and buy their statins, or they buy. I mean, do you feel the same way about it? I mean, or like in India, if they go to they're going to a real pharmacy in India and just buying it a lot less expensively. What do you think of that?
I have some pretty strong feelings about it, but I do think as much as Palmer and I fault our FDA, of their shortcomings. Again, I would like to just back up Palmer's little plug for that book, A Bottle of Lies. And I'll send you a link to that, Carl, afterwards, that maybe you could post. But it's an excellent book that talks about the outsourcing of our manufacturing of prescription drugs in America and all the problems, and the lack of FDA oversight of these manufacturing facilities is frankly beyond scary. But once you step out of the United States, especially to Mexico, and these other places, you're really like, it's scary enough to get prescription drugs in America, but you go outside of here and we are the gold standard, the United States is. And so going to India, I mean, sure, it might be good, but it might not. But if one were to have read this book, you absolutely would not take that medication yourself, or would you recommend a family member to do it? It's really playing with fire.
Well, it's an interesting perspective, because many of my patients over the years and friends have said, the medication in the United States is so falsely inflated and so expensive. Yeah. People in other countries can get it so much less expensive. So, I mean, and some of that's true. I mean, there's no question, but there's also, as you're pointing out, there's some benefit to paying more money for it and getting it in the United States. It's being policed and overseen. There's a lot more oversight.
The
increased cost is a lot from the PBMs, though.
Yep.
It is an interesting perspective, though. Like, because you'd like to say to someone, yeah, you're right. You're getting, Crestor for $1, 50 cents, whatever they're paying.
Yeah.
It's a lot more expensive here. But I think it's still right. There's two parts to it. It is falsely inflated here, but also you need to get it here. It's kind of like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
I agree with that, except for when it comes to, like, say, Ozempic. I would like to dovetail into that whole thing with the PBMs Dan was mentioning. So the impact of the PBMs with the cost of Ozempic, you can buy the exact same drug here in the US and you can pay $1,200, $1,300, or you can go to Japan or some other European Union country and you might pay $150 or something like that. The exact same thing, same manufacturer. So
it's actually
the PBMs,
right? It's not.
Yes,
it's not counterfeit. I get it. Yeah, that's
correct. Yeah. So the PBMs have inflated it that much.
Wow. And how do you know it's a real product? If you buy it in Japan and it says, like, it has a label that has a pharmaceutical company on it and it looks real. How would you guys know? if someone brought it into your pharmacy?
No, I mean, I would, I know that they're sourcing it from that manufacturer though. Like they, the same manufacturer
Right.
sending it, or government's buying it, or,
Lets
you
you
know,
feel more comfortable.
yeah.
I mean, it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
my wife can tell you, like, we're in the city all the time and they sell Gucci and everything else right on the street. And she can tell the difference. She,
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
talking about that too, our country has its faults for sure. Like I think there was a scheme that you were talking about HIV medications. I think Biktarvy was the one mentioned in one of those articles, and they would use Medicare. They'd go and get the medication, they wouldn't even use it, and they would sell it back into the marketplace, and making money that way. So that kind of stuff's happening, using
Yeah.
Medicare as like this money laundering scheme.
So, in the
Yeah.
business world, that's arbitrage, where you buy low, sell high, and
Yeah.
you make on the delta. That's where your profit margin is. So yeah, you're always going to find smart people who are motivated to do that, who are, don't have the patient's interests at heart. They have their own
Yeah.
interests. But, fantastic stuff, guys. We're going to have to continue this. And as I mentioned, the HIV drugs fall into this, the Botox, Ozempic, and other medications that are truly relevant for lots and lots of folks. So we'll come back to this. We're looking forward to your comments. Please like and subscribe. We're really glad you're here. We hope you enjoyed Dan and Palmer's discussion. John, always great seeing you. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.